It's a strange feeling, you think, being underneath the water for so long. Usually you have only taken brief trips underneath the waves, spending as much time as your lungs would allow. But it's been over an hour since you drank the elixir your companion provided, and you've been breathing the salty ocean water with little issues so far. No issues except, of course, keeping up with the excited merfolk, hurrying you along as your terrestrial form struggles to keep up with their speed in their natural environment, being mostly dragged along like a sack of potatoes while your friend does all the swimming. Moving the both of you along with the rhythmic motions of her powerful scaled tail, you can't help but watch her swim, graceful and controlled. Her shark-like tail, common amongst her Caldera clan, moving back and forth, making her nearly metallic blue-green scales glimmer in the sunlight that peeks through the holes of the ceiling, as the two of you swim onwards through the covered reef. "Come on," she urges, the frills on the side of her neck twitching in annoyance, or maybe excitement. Despite your best efforts, you haven't quite gotten the hold of merfolk facial cues yet. Some of it is visual, but there are pheromone releases that you are simply not subject to. "We're gonna be late. You have just got to see the view from the top," she exclaims, her primary arms gripping you tighter while her smaller secondary arms fiddle with a woven belt of polished coral petals, wrapped around what most creatures would consider their waist. You didn't quite catch the name of this garment, something in the two-toned melodic language of the merfolk. Some sort of dance belt, you believe? Not at odds with her current outfit at all, as she is certainly dressed for an event. Shark leather harnesses, flowing sleeves of kelp fiber and sashes all decorated with the inlays of colored glass beads and abalone shells. Even her massive tail that makes up the majority of her body is decorated, bearing various hoops of gold that sit right above the fins, trinkets trailing behind her as she moves the both of you forward. And then, all of a sudden, the path opens up, and then you see it. A city, if such a word even fits, rises from the caldera floor deep below, like a dream carved from coral and basalt. Towering reef spires carve upward, shaped by nature and by delicate merfolk alchemical artistry. You see rigid stone and colorful corals sculpted together through chemical reaction rather than chisel, heat from the geothermal vents at their base causing a sort of mirage effect all around them. Bubbling membranes of cultivated microorganisms, drifting jars of reactive materials harvested from the heat vents at their bases. You see merfolk vent shapers, covered head to toe in heat-resistant material and bearing tools of shark bone, volcanic glass, and pressure-hardened nacre. Looking beyond, you see that the entire seabed is alive. Glowing bacteria coat the upper surfaces, creating soft halos of green, blue, and violet that ripple with the movement of unseen current. Buildings and structures seem to grow out of each other organically. No corners, no hard lines, only natural, waving curve. Plants cover every surface, and great schools of fish swim freely through, unbothered by the living city underneath, though sometimes stopping to nip at a tasty morsel. You feel your merfolk companion squeeze your arm, and you look back. Her mouth is split open in a wide grin of dangerous, shark-like teeth, each one triple-pointed like a trident of some kind, absolutely perfect for catching and holding on to fish. Her eyes gleam with excitement, warm and bubbly, framed by the crushed pearl luster that she wears around her eyes. Her tail flickers behind you. The sound of the volcanic glass trinkets clinking together draws you out of your thoughts. "So," she says, still maintaining that ever-impressive wide grin, "wanna go dancing first?" Welcome back, everybody. In this Forged by Fable, we will be taking a look at the Merfolk, the denizens of the sea, and discussing various things about them that I think would be cool to include in any fantasy setting or D&D character. Although, really, I just want to chat about monsters, and maybe help some of you stir up some ideas of your own. So, let's get into it. The Merfolk obviously live in water, so when designing a settlement for Merfolk, let your imagination wander to all of the exciting places that they could live. What areas would they be likely to settle in? Or what areas might they be forced into? What resources might be available to them that could make this place appealing? And how has that shaped their culture, or maybe even their biology? A merfolk settlement in the ocean might be built inside a lush caldera at the bottom of the seafloor, taking advantage of the abundant reefs and geothermal vents there for both food and crafting. And the merfolk that live there might be more shark-like in appearance, for example, honed by the environment to have razor-sharp senses and sonar-like detection skills. Or a merfolk town could be built inside an area that has frequent and massive blooms of jellyfish, tens of thousands at a time, providing not only a source of food, but a natural defense, as anything wanting to get through runs the risk of having many, many painful stings. The environment and diet might make the merfolk here larger and slower, but capable of consuming large amounts of jellyfish at a time, maybe even becoming immune to their stings or developing some sort of sting mechanism of their own. Maybe an even crazier scenario could happen, like a merfolk settlement being built inside the body of a massive ocean leviathan that swallowed the community ages ago, and now they scavenge whatever the beast happens to eat in order to survive and live in this strange environment. The tight quarters of the inside of this creature making them more eel-like and resistant to the digestive acid that they sometimes need to swim through. The water is a strange and alien world already, so it's fair to say that the merfolk who live there are no doubt just as alien and also quite adept at surviving its many unique challenges, developing their own ways of handling threats or hazards, making new techniques for building or housing or tools. Materials will, of course, range based on where they would settle, and merfolk might value things a bit differently in their building materials than societies that exist on dry land. For example, verticality is not an issue underwater, so merfolk could make buildings as tall as they would like. Yet, structures that they build would need to be able to withstand the constant erosion from the water's natural ebb and flow. This might call for material that is very durable, perhaps something like glass, undersea stones, basalt, or something like a resin-secreting coral that repairs itself over time, growing the structure made of it larger and larger. But merfolk are equally able to exist in pre-existing structures, a ship graveyard or some sort of a vast kelp forest underneath an immense frozen lake. Or perhaps merfolk like to build things out of more unorthodox materials, like carving out spaces to live from massive stalks of underwater plant life, or creating self-contained bubble membranes affixed to the sheer cliffs of a continental slope. Whatever the case might be, try and imagine how their access to resources based on their environment might affect what they would create with, and also how they would create with it. If your merfolk live in a coastal reef, how do they interact with it? Do they build undersea gardens for various kelps, warts, and corals that produce edible polyps? What about animal crops? The sea has plenty of urchins, clams, mussels, and jellyfish that can be corralled into sheltered spaces and farmed for food. If your merfolk do that, how do they care for them? Do these gardens get built near areas where large groups of fish gather, for example, so they can be aerated and fertilized? Or do the merfolk use some function of the area itself to care for them? Or do they focus more of their time on hunting, looming over the reefs and chasing down prey when they get the chance, setting traps and ambush points in their small hunting parties, all while looking over their shoulders for other predators looking to make a meal of them? And what about industry and making tools? Do your merfolk rely more on their natural biology? Do they have claws or some other type of quirk like venom or bioelectricity that they use? Or did they develop tools in industry not only to augment these abilities, but to compensate for ones that they otherwise would not have? What would that industry look like? It is a much different world underneath the water, and technology might have advanced differently than ones on dry land did. Even simple inventions that were pivotal to other societies, things like harnessing fire or even the wheel, might be valued differently in some cases, or maybe not even invented at all, the technological development being instead focused towards something else. Instead of learning to forge metal or other forms of industry, maybe the merfolk focused on chemistry and animal husbandry, taking inspiration from the abundant compounds and creatures in the sea to meet their needs. Tools made not of metal or wood, but enameled coral or pressure-hardened pearl that are not only durable, but practical as well. Important records transcribed onto thick frosted glass tablets, etched with acid from a particular type of cone snail, doors made of bubble membranes or layers of long-tentacled anemone that not only clean those that move through them, but can be used as a security measure set to deliver agonizing stings to intruders. To a land dweller, the sea might seem desolate compared to what they are used to, but to the merfolk, it's their home, and they have had time and drive to find ways for it to benefit them and the needs that they have. So don't feel like you have to make them the same as land dwellers. Go ahead and make weird inventions and ways to use them. Make them feel distinct and filled with things that are combined and refined over time. This applies to their culture as well. When you imagine your merfolk, what kinds of things do they do in their leisure time or for recreation? Do they perhaps have their own sports, such as racing each other through tight, complex coral labyrinths, pushed by a raging current where each movement counts? Do they play some sort of ball game based on buoyancy, with one team trying to sink the ball while the other tries to get it to break the surface, all for the entertainment of a cheering crowd? Do they perhaps sing, using their voices to make hauntingly beautiful songs, either for entertainment or for special holidays, giving pause and serenity to those that hear it? Maybe they paint or dye things with the myriad of bright and vibrant colors, materials, and pigments that are available to them in the sea. What does their clothing look like, if they wear any at all? Do they prefer long, flowing sleeves that accent their frills and tail flukes, while wearing harnesses with pouches on their tails for personal storage. Perhaps they adorn themselves with colored volcanic glass or polished bits of coral that glimmer and shine as they swim, a collection of merfolk being a dazzling display of light and color. What about holidays? What sorts of things would they celebrate? The shifting of the currents could bring or take away bountiful schools of fish, acting as their winter or fall, with celebrations during them to feast and partake in the season. Maybe young merfolk have a coming-of-age ceremony where they are officially welcomed into the community as adults. Or perhaps they hold festivals to celebrate great and important figures or events in their histories, stories told to keep memories alive, or celebrations to remind the newer generations of the accomplishments their ancestors made. And for those few, maybe some merfolk want to become the subject of those stories, or through circumstances are made to be. What would drive a merfolk into the call of adventure? Personal glory, or maybe something more grounded? Perhaps their home is being threatened by an outside force, be it a physical force or one more abstract, like pollution, and they need a team of capable people to help deal with it. Or maybe they seek a long-forgotten relic or treasure that was lost ages ago that is very, very important to their culture. Think about what might motivate a merfolk to engage in a life of adventure, and what unique viewpoint their upbringing might have had on them. Would they have learned magic at some point? And if they did, what does merfolk magic even look like? Perhaps they are a trained warrior or a follower of some undersea deity or pantheon that strive to exert its will upon the ocean. Perhaps they even struck a deal with one of the more ancient creatures from the dark, abyssal, hadal depths that no one who ventures to ever comes back from, and are now on the hook of a powerful being that is using them as they see fit. But that, I think, I will leave to you. Hey, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really hope that you enjoyed yourself, and if you'd like to support me a little bit more, I do have a Patreon where I post all kinds of extra goodies. Things like early access, extra content, sneak peeks, and some special projects just for the fans. Also, if you want something that you can show off in the real world, check out our merch store. It's another way to support me and spread the love of your favorite characters. And for those of you who enjoy keeping up with lore, we also have a wiki. And thank you to all of those who have supported me so far. I'm so happy to create for all of you. Take care, and I'll see you again next time.